No one's told people that true change can happen within them. And so then, when people start to realize that there's a gap between the external world and how they present themselves to the world and their attention on the outer world and their attention on their inner world and how they really feel. And if they're spending the majority of their time looking outside of them for change and they don't want to look at this feeling, all they want to do is make that feeling go away, they're going to wind up in trouble. So true change is when you start looking within and you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. In neuroscience, it's called metacognition. You become aware of your habits and your unconscious behaviors. And you look at those emotions that are connected to past experiences and allow yourself to observe them. So then think about this. If 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are those programmed states, the moment you're observing how you think, how you act, and how you feel, it means you're no longer the program. You're now a consciousness observing the program, and you're beginning to objectify your subjective self. You are seeing yourself through the eyes of someone else. Turns out that the size of the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human being, 40% of our entire brain, that's what separates us from all other species. It's the boss, it's the CEO, it's the conscience, it's the creative center. It's what speculates possibilities, it's what learns from its mistakes, it's what has intention, attention. It regulates and controls behaviors and emotional reactions. When your forebrain begins to turn on, when that begins to happen, you are now beginning to become the executive in your life. You're starting to gain more control over your life. If you're living primarily as the body-mind, then the hindbrain is looking for some chemical relief. So by the mere fact that you can begin to observe who you're being means you could modify who you are to do a better job in life. So then, going from the old self to the new self, I call that crossing the river of change. Because the hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before. And the moment you're not going to think the same way, make the same choice that leads to the same behavior, that creates the same experience, that produces the same emotion, you are not going to feel like yourself. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be a certain amount of uncertainty. You are going to feel the state of unpredictability. And that's the moment you step into the river of change. And the moment you step into the river of change, then that discomfort means you're in the unknown. And so the body, which has been conditioned to the mind, who's been living in the past, would rather hold on to the guilt, because at least it's familiar. Would rather hold on to their own emptiness and unworthiness than not feel that, because that's the unknown. So people cling to the familiar, and it transcends rationality. So then, the moment you step into that river and the body has become the mind, the body starts sending signals back to the brain because it wants to return back to the familiar self. And this is when we start to hear all the chatter, the sub-vocalizations. You're not good enough. You're too much like your mother. It's your ex-husband's fault. Start tomorrow. This doesn't feel good. What's wrong with me? I want to kill myself. That's the body saying, I don't want to go in the unknown. I don't trust the unknown. I'd rather hold on to this. Now, going from that old self to the new self is the biological, the neurological, the chemical, the hormonal, the genetic death of the old self. And most people, they step out into that unknown and it feels so uncomfortable, they can't predict it, they return back to the known. People say to me, well, I can't predict my future. And I always say to them, well, the best way to predict your future is to create it, not from the known, but from the unknown. And that void, that unknown, is the perfect place to create from. Now, why is this dangerous? Because when you're living in survival 70% of the time, there's better chances in survival from running from the unknown than embracing the unknown, right? If there's a predator out there, you hear something around the corner and you can't see it, that's an unknown. You're going to run. You're not going to go, and it's not a time to trust. It's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to communicate. Here, kitty, kitty. It's not a time to do that. It's time to run. You'll never trust the unknown in that state. So if people are living by these emotional states of survival, they're never going to want to step out into the unknown because they can't predict the future. So they'd rather hold on to what they have. Turns out that those emotions of stress are highly addictive.